We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, of course.
I thought that's what your job was about, talking?
Actually, Mr. Parker, I will say that my job is about trust. I can expect people who don't trust me to talk about sensitive things with me. So this session is entirely in your hands.
I'll talk about it. Therapy was my idea after all. They say that since there was just the one incident, it wasn't really necessary, but I thought it was a good idea.
Alright then, tell me what happened.
It was just a drawing on the sidewalk, a stencil, you know? Artists leave them around the city, sometimes. And I was out shopping with my family when my son pointed out. It was a skeleton wearing a top hat, and it had the word Saturday underneath. What do you think that means?
It sounds like Baron Samedi.
Who?
He is a voodoo spirit. He watches over the dead, and he's usually represented by a top hat and a skull. Samedi means Saturday, so this drawing is frightening you.
I had a kind of it when I saw it. They call it an anxiety attack. They even took me to the hospital.
And what did they find out?
They said there's nothing wrong with me physically. They talk about stress and lack of sleep, and they said I should take it easy, but not to worry unless it happens again. But I'm worried anyway.
Has anything like this ever happened before?
Once, the same day that my son died.
You said your son was the one who noticed the stencil, right?
That's my youngest son, Dylan. I had an older son, Jonah, but he's not with us anymore. He was murdered 5 years ago.
Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Parker. Can I ask you if you received any psychological counseling afterwards?
No, I was busy with Dylan. Should I talk about the murder?
As I said, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to.
I'll talk about it. Jonah was 15. He was very gifted. He played the cello and the piano, and they made him the organist at our church. That was what got him into trouble. Jonah was talented. He was, I guess you could say he had a performer's charisma. I'm sorry, it's hard to talk about.
It's alright, Mr. Parker. Should we change the subject?
No, I will already say this much. Something people like about Jonah, he will always play the hymns, but he'll play some of his own music too. Before and after the service, he composed his own material. It was very strange sounding, but everyone liked it. Well, almost everyone. One day a man came to us after church and told him to stop.
Told him to stop playing?
Told him to stop playing his own music. He was very upset. He looked like he hadn't had much sleep. He might have been drunk. He told us that the song Jonah played that day was wrong somehow. That it was driving him crazy. He was screaming at us in the parking lot, telling us that we didn't realize that what we were doing. He spent his whole life trying to get away from that music. It didn't make any sense.
Tell me about the song.
It was very odd, now that you mention it. It was bouncy. It made me think of the circus, for some reason. It made sense if you knew Jonah, though he was always playing for laughs. I heard him practicing in his room. It made me feel unsettled the first time I heard it.
And what about this man?
Well, that day in the parking lot, he just ran off after scaring the daylights out of us. But the next week, he came back with a gun.
Mr. Parker?
It was the Day of the Dead, November the 1st. I remember that. Someone had left something on the organ for Jonah, as a joke. You know those Day of the Dead decorations? The little statues of skeleton doing everyday things. Skeleton housewives cooking, or a skeleton barber with a scissors and a razor.
A therapist?
Huh?
I have one that's a skeleton therapist, with a skeleton patient on his couch. A client gave it to me. It's actually quite funny.
Oh, well, this one was a skeleton playing the piano. Jonah thought it was hilarious. He showed it to everyone. Nobody would admit to living it. Then he started playing. Everyone was enjoying it. He was coming to the end of the song, and then that man from the week before stood up, and then...
Where is that man now, Mr. Parker?
In a mental hospital. I visited him a few times. He cries a lot and tells me he's sorry, but he says, "You must understand why. You of all people must understand why I didn't." I don't know why he says that, but the thing I remember about that day, now that I never remember before, is that little Day of the Dead title. The skeleton was wearing a top hat, you see.
So a stencil drawing reminded you of it, right?
No, that wasn't it. I mean, I suppose it did, but, doctor, I never told anyone this before. But the day that Jonah was murdered, everyone assumed I was hysterical because of what happened. And I was. But it started before that. It started when I saw that little tattoo on the church organ. Something about that figure, the skeleton and the hat. It terrified me. It scared me so bad that I wanted to stand up and shout to Jonah to run away from it. But I was too frightened to even move. And by the time I could, the man with the gun had already...
It's alright, Mr. Parker. But you are sure that your fear response started before the shooting, not after?
Yes, I'm sure.
So the skeleton and the hat, that image upsets you, right? Do you know why?
I can imagine.
Can you think of the first time you ever saw it?
Well, when I was a child, I used to have a nightmare. There was a little boy in a room.
Was it you?
It might have been, but it was hard to tell. Whoever he was in a dark room, and he was crying. All around him there were these, I guess, puppets or dolls, and they were screaming.
The puppets were screaming?
Yes, all of them, screaming, and the little boy was crying.
Did you have this nightmare a lot?
All the time when I was 5.
What does this have to do with the skeleton in the top hat?
That was one of the puppets. That's the first time I can remember seeing that image. Well, not seeing exactly, but that's my earliest memory.
I see. What did your parents do when you told them about this dream?
They took the TV away.
Why?
They said that I had the dream because of something I saw on TV.
Do you remember that?
No, and I didn't at the time either. But they insist. It was actually very strange. Now that I think about it, it seems to scare them, somehow. Of course it's hard to remember. I was so young, you know?
Of course. Do you still have this dream?
No, that is not until very recently.
But you have had it again, right?
Yes, just after the stencil drawing and the anxiety attack. That same night actually. But only that once. And that was the first time in 4 years. I guess it's normal, right? To have that dream again after seeing something that reminds me of it.
We don't really deal in words like normal or abnormal here, Mr. Parker. I will say that it is not worthy that you had the same dream after so long, but I don't think it's something you have to worry about. Can I ask? Was anything different about the dream this time?
Yes.
What was that?
One of the puppets, it looked like Jonah.
I can imagine it was very upsetting. But it's important to remember that dreams are your mind's way of trying to tell us something. Can you remember any other strange dreams about your oldest son?
For a while, right after he died, I would have one where I was standing on the shore, watching him sail away on a big ship.
That's a very common image.
No, not like this. There was something wrong with that ship. Something terrible. And the people on it with him, they weren't people. Not normal people. I had a feeling they were, kidnapping him, carrying him away, like they were...
Pirates?
Yes, that's it. And I heard music too, strange. Jumble circus music. It sounded a little like the song that Jonah played in the church. And come to think of it, he told me that the song came to him in a dream first. It might even have been the dream about the ship. I didn't pay much attention. I remember I even paid having to make a phone call so I could leave the room and stop listening to him talk about it. Isn't that terrible? But at the time hearing about his dream obsessed me very much.
Let's move on. Have there been any other incidents lately that have upset you? Anything unusual that's disrupted your regular routine?
I'm not sure what's important.
Anything might be important. We won't know for sure unless we talk about it.
Well, a few weeks ago, this was before the panic attack, I was at a toy store trying to find something for Dylan. He was turning 5 that week, and I found this thing. It was a doll, but not a normal one. It was like a little pirate, but its head was one from a porcelain baby doll. The old kind. It looked like something a serial killer would make in their basement.
And that bothered you?
Well, it was horribly ugly. I asked the owner and she said she would find it when she was cleaning out the storeroom. She had no idea where it came from. She wasn't sure whether she should sell it or not. I told her to throw it away. It scared me. I guess it sounds silly now. Why would something like that get me so much?
To grind your skin.
What?
I said things get on your skin.
I thought you said that. Yeah, never mind. There was something else too. As I was cleaning my son's room the next day, I thought I saw the same doll in there.
I thought you did?
As I was cleaning under his bed, something caught my eye. It was that red bandana. And I saw that doll's little face staring at me, with those cracked, pained eyes. And I swear I just about screamed. But when I looked under the bed again, it wasn't there. And I told myself I just imagined it. But, there are all these things really important?
Oh yes, Mr. Parker. I say we are making great progress. With these sort of things, you have to go inside.
What did you say?
You have to go inside of your mindset. You know, inside your issues.
But why did you say it that way the first time?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Doctor,
Let's move on. It seems that your anxiety is being triggered by some very specific imagery. What else has been on your mind?
Dylan, he's a very bright child, like his brother, and they look alike, but he's not a musician. Instead, he draws.
Has he been making strange pictures?
How did you know?
A lucky guess. You go on, Mr. Parker.
I feel sick. I feel like the room is moving.
It's your imagination. Tell me about Dylan's pictures.
They're of a sailing ship, but not a normal one. It has a figurehead at the front of it that's too big and it talks.
The figurehead talks?
Yes,
How do you know that if it's just a picture?
I just know, and he's been drawing it for weeks, and weeks over and over. And sometimes he draws other things too, strange things, terrible things.
But things you recognize.
Yes,
Where have you seen these things before, Mr. Parker?
in my dreams, and on the television, when I was 5 years old. The show came on every day, and I was scared of it, but I watched it anyway. And when I tried to get my parents to watch it with me, they said,
What did they say?
that there was no show, and I didn't understand what they meant. And that's when the nightmare began. And I remember now, that's where I first heard that song, The Strange on the Jonah played. That's why I was upset when I heard it, because it reminded me of that show, and I thought maybe that's why the man at the church was upset by it too. I guess as I grew up, I kinda forgot about the whole thing, but
But you didn't forget about it, didn't you? You never forget the things that are really important in childhood.
I guess you don't.
And we didn't forget about you either.
What?
I said they didn't forget.
No, you didn't. You said we. We didn't forget about you.
Well, it's true. We didn't forget. We have been waiting for you, Oliveiro, all this time.
Dr. Horace, why are you looking like that? Dr.
I'm-
Horace,
I'm not a doctor, and you see this isn't a doctor's office at all, is it? It is the cabin of a ship. That is why it's moving, and that's why you start to feel seasick.
what's going on?
You are off on an adventure on the high seas, Oliver. Just like the ones on television when you were a little kid. The ones you made just for you.
Stop talking like that, and stop calling me that too. My name isn't Oliver.
But it could be. You look like Oliver anyways. And think how much better life would be if you were. Oliver never had a murdered son. Oliver never had to worry that he was going to lose his mind. Oliver only had adventures all the time.
But they were so awful, so frightening.
Well, being a child is always a little frightening, isn't it? But you won't be alone here. All of your old friends are on board, and we have some new ones too. Even Jonah is here.
Jonah?
Oh yes, he's been just the best little crew member for us, and he's waiting for you. Just think about how wonderful it will be to see him again, and to see everyone else too. All one big happy crew together.
But what about Dylan?
Your other boy? Oh, don't worry about him. He will get around with him in due time. But you hear that, Oliver?
I hear a voice.
And what is it telling you?
I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to be here. I want to go home.
This is your home, Oliver. This is the home we made for you. The home that has been waiting for you. The home that you will be in forever and ever. The voice that you hear? Why? That's the voice of your new home. And what is it saying? What is it saying, Oliver?
It's saying that I have to go inside.